Hey friends, let's try this again. This is another Bad Science Sunday, and I'm going to talk about perseverance. Don't worry. I think perseverance is excellent science. I am really happy to see this. It is the best use of the space program, maybe aside from monitoring the Earth and all that kind of stuff, but to send robots to another planet and explore and figure things out. I just give it a big thumbs up. This is great stuff. On top of that, this is a project that is specifically intended to look for life on Mars. Oh man, we biologists, we think that's pretty cool. Okay. Now, personally, I think it's unlikely they're going to find any, but I could be wrong. The reason I don't think it's very likely is, well, they're looking on what might have been an ancient floodplain, a place where there was perhaps an ancient Martian lake, and I don't think that's the best place to go looking. So why is that? Well, current theories think, they speculate that life on Earth arose in the deep sea and near ocean vents, near sites of volcanic activity, where we've got all kinds of useful inorganic nutrients bubbling out, things like sulfides, and where the pH exhibits a really strong variation. So you can set up interesting pH gradients. And that was the initial energy to drive the evolution of early life. That's not going to be where they find it. Now, there were apparently, again, people argue about this. I am not a space scientist. I am not a Martian geologist, so I'm not an expert. But people argue about this, but they do say that it's likely that once upon a time, 3.5 billion years ago, Mars did have oceans. So I think oceans are kind of a prerequisite here. And also that Mars had tectonic activity. So there were things like volcanoes. Now there are rifts in the crust. It sort of suggests that there were perhaps the conditions to generate life once upon a time. But again, those would have been in the oceans, which would be, they think the ocean was up near the far northern part of the planet. And that's where I would think it's most likely that this particular study implies that, well, life spread out enough that it was then populating, for instance, freshwater lakes on the surface of Mars. And maybe. I don't know. I'm kind of leaning against it. But maybe they'll find something. They could find, what would be really cool is finding stromatolites. Could happen. It's kind of what I have, my highest goal is to find stromatolites and not dead Barsoomian skulls. No, you're not going to find that. But yeah, maybe stromatolites, maybe evidence of algae, things like that. That would be awesome. Now, but the thing is, even though I'm rather dubious, how do we figure these things out? Well, you have to go look. You have to do the science. You have to study them empirically. So I applaud this. This is exactly what we need to do. And it's within reach. It's good science. I approve. Now, though, you're going to say, but you're doing this under this Bad Science Sunday thing. Where's the bad science? It's not coming from NASA. It's coming from our old friend Ken Ham. Oh, man. Yeah, so Ken Ham went on Facebook and said these things. Here's the thing. In addition to believing that the Earth was created in 6 days, 6,000 years ago, Ken Ham and his group have been on record saying there can't possibly be life on any other planet, that the entire universe is vast and empty. Life could not appear elsewhere. And I'll go through their reasoning. It's specious and silly, but we'll do it. Okay, so here's what Ken Ham said. So he said about perseverance. This is an example of evolutionary beliefs driving research. He is correct. Yes, we have the example of life evolving on Earth. It's not unreasonable to speculate that maybe it arose elsewhere. So NASA is spending $3 billion primarily to see if there was once life on Mars. Yeah, okay. Then he says, what an impact there might be if that $3 billion was spent to show people life on Earth could never have evolved by natural processes, and that the very first verse of the Bible is confirmed by science. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Spending $3 billion to proclaim God's word in the gospel has eternal value, as every human soul will live forever in heaven or hell. Okay. Yeah. So this is this is where I say creationism leads to anti-science attitudes, because what he is arguing here is the opposite of what I said a moment ago. So I'm doubtful that they're going to find evidence of life. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Ken Ham is absolutely certain that they won't, and that therefore the money spent in this research is a waste, and that they ought to spend it instead on evangelical outreach. Oh yeah, okay. No, this is absurd. But if Ken Ham were in charge of our science budget, he would simply say, no, there's no reason to go to other planets because there is no life there. There can't be life there. That they're intrinsically uninteresting because God just set them up as lights in the sky. Okay, let's take a look at his reasoning. So he cites an article down there, the Answers in Genesis.org/astronomy, yeah, etc. You can go find it yourself. I'm not going to link to it because it's garbage. It's an article by a guy named Danny Faulkner, who I have encountered before. He was in that terrible movie by Eric Hovind, what was it? Origins. And he made stupid arguments there. He's going to make a stupid argument here. So what is the basis of their belief that there couldn't possibly be life on Mars? Well, let's take a look. Okay, he says, if the universe is filled with intelligent life forms, as evolution assumed would be true if evolution happens all the time in the universe, then what would be the spiritual state of these extraterrestrials? Okay, well, yeah, that's their concern. All right, what would, I don't know. I really don't care. But okay, that's his argument. So he says, if otherworldly beings truly are like us, then they must possess souls with eternal destinies. That presents a problem. Well, first of all, we're not going to find intelligent Martians. So this is kind of an irrelevant point he's making. What I expect we'll find is bacteria, maybe some multicellular algae or something like that. But no, we don't have to worry about the spiritual awareness of these long-dead Martians. But he thinks this causes a problem. Why? Because according to Romans 5:12, we are sinners because of Adam's disobedience. Okay. And then here's the theological dilemma they confront themselves with. Are extraterrestrials also sinners because of Adam's sin? That would mean that Christ's finished work at Calvary would need to atone for their sins as well. I don't accept the logic of this atonement by the death of someone else for my sins. So that's a major obstacle for me to accepting this. If Jesus dying could atone for my sins, why couldn't it atone for Martian sins? I don't see why you couldn't make that argument. It's magic, right? A magical sacrifice. So, that happened. But to extraterrestrials, we are aliens and the Earth is an alien world. Again, so what? The Middle East is an alien country to me. So some guy dying on a stick in Palestine, I could argue, well, that's hardly relevant to me, an American born on the Western continent here. Therefore, the gospel message in other worlds is alien to them and might begin a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Now, I don't understand the logic of this point. So he's saying that to aliens, the sacrifice of Jesus would be remote and distant and kind of irrelevant. Yeah, I just said the same thing about the sacrifice of some guy in Palestine 2,000 years ago. So what? This is not an argument, a reasonable argument against the possibility of life on other planets. Now, I am an atheist, so I'm probably the wrong person to be talking about this. Do theologians find it impossible to believe that, or do all theologians, I should say, find it impossible to believe that life arose on other planets? So yeah, I bet you there are theologians that argue the other way, that it's perfectly reasonable that there were multiple Jesus all across the universe. But he's going to go on to make some more arguments and just sink ever deeper into the morass of nonsense. So, what is he going to say? Well, he's going to say, of the alternatives, most people readily see the folly of such a theory. Therefore, some suggest that extraterrestrials may be sinners because of the disobedience of Adam-like forebears on each respective planet. Okay. And the objection to that is, why couldn't there be? Jesus is a supernatural being who could do all kinds of things. He could be in multiple places at once. He could be doing this all across the galaxy, all at one shot. Really easy. For him, at least. Okay, he says, so would that require Jesus to have died on those other worlds to atone for the sins of alien races? Again, I don't accept the whole idea of sacrificial atonement, but okay, let's continue this argument. He says, Jesus didn't do that. How does he know? Because the Bible says so, right? Instead, after Jesus ascended from earth, he went to sit at his Father's right hand. Therefore, we can be sure from Scripture that Jesus quite literally died once for all. Again, there are these assumptions in their interpretations. I just don't see it. So we don't know what Jesus was doing before his time on earth, right? He's an immortal being, so he was presumably in some state. Maybe we were the 532nd planet that Jesus visited to sacrifice himself and save all the inhabitants. Nothing in the Bible contradicts that idea. Maybe he died here on Earth and then immediately, warped off to another world and did the same thing over again. Why not? The Bible doesn't talk about it, so you can't say it's not possible. So you can't really be sure about any of this stuff he's claiming. So then he says, okay, some Christians will argue that perhaps extraterrestrials may have fallen into sin and hence are not sinners or subject to its effects. Okay, here we have another possibility. It's just humans on Earth who are descended from that rotten rat fink, Adam, who ate of the apple and condemned all of us to sin for eternity. Yeah, it's all his fault, just him. But maybe over there on Alpha Centauri, they Their Adam figure was a little bit more disciplined and did not, and they are living in a state of grace right now. How can you be sure they're not? What's your evidence? He doesn't have any. Okay, but he says, but Romans speaks of how man's sin tainted all of creation, including the whole universe. What an interesting implication that one guy on one planet disobeying the Lord meant that the entire universe, billions of planets all around the universe, were filled with sin. That was one potent apple. Okay, yeah, you can argue that. You've got no evidence, you got no reason for it, but sure, and likewise, anybody could argue the contrary. So, what's going on here is that they're building supposition upon supposition. If statements on top of speculation. It's just a teetering pile of illogical nonsense, and at some point it's got to all come crashing down. No, it doesn't, because they don't care about reason over there at Answers in Genesis. So it's not going to happen. Besides, they are about to bring eschatology into it. Look at this. Because this sin permeated all of creation, as a result, God must replace the current universe with a new heaven and earth. Not just planet Earth. The whole universe has to go kerblooey and be replaced. It is inconceivable that sinless beings could inhabit sin-tainted worlds. Inconceivable? I don't think you understand that word. Sure, it's conceivable. Yeah, they could be going on sinlessly, happy and full of grace, totally unaware of the shenanigans going on planet Earth, unless we go there and tell them. And so why not? Let's just do it that way. And then he says, it's especially since they and their worlds will be destroyed at the end of the age. Man, this is a doom-laden theology, isn't it? Everything is going to die. Everything's going to be destroyed. Yeah, the fall will be complete, and we'll just go kerblooey. Again, this is not an objection, because God of the Bible has never once exhibited a bit of remorse or restraint and goes ahead and murders everybody willy-nilly. So think of Noah's flood and the end of that. There were newborn babies in that story who were destroyed. There are little children who are destroyed in that story. If you go to the Creation Museum, they actually have a little video illustrating the big Noachian flood that occurred. And it's horrifying, because it's all shown from the point of view of a little girl sitting in her little hut with her family, and they're all smiling and happy, and she looks out the big square hole in the wall, the window, and sees this giant tsunami rushing at them to destroy them. So, yeah, why not? Those intelligent beings on a planet orbiting Alpha Centauri, they're going to be so surprised when God's holy wrath comes sweeping across the universe and wipes them all out. God does that, according to the Bible. Okay, so that's their excuse. That's their story. I get. It's so inconsistent and so hypothetical and so bizarre. And worst of all, it's a science killer. I tell people this over and over again, that creationism kills science. And this is a perfect example, because what they're arguing is that just because of the way their Bible is written and how they have interpreted a peculiar interpretation not shared by every Christian, then there can be no life on Mars, and seeking evidence of life on Mars is wasteful. We shouldn't do it. That is anti-science. You could bring up good reasons like, oh, it's really expensive to go to Mars. That would slow us down. but it's not a good argument against doing the science. Even worse is this argument that this weird religious interpretation of a holy book has given you all the answers, so we don't need to do any science. But that's what Ken Ham does. Okay, good enough there. I'll stop now. Yeah, I got a lot of work to do. I'll go do a lot of work. I'll go focus on that for a while. And you tell me what you think. Are my arguments bogus? Or Ken Ham's arguments bogus? Is the whole Answers in Genesis organization full of bullcrap? That's my position. And what do you think of good old Perseverance? I am really impressed with that. It's got a good goal, and I think the engineers kind of went crazy with this weird plan to you got to lower it on a winch to the planet, and it's going to gather samples, and then another space probe is going to come land, and it's going to collect the samples, and it's going to launch it up to a third that will then return samples to Earth. Okay, that's very Rube Goldberg like, but okay, if it works, it works. Let's go do it. Some more science. I'm all for it. Okay, talk to y'all later.